Fall is a wonderful time of the year. It is predictable. It never fails to appear each and every year. It is not only a physical manifestation of nature, it is also a spiritual assurance of reincarnation. And as you know, nature is my church. It is a time of the year when we all enjoy this phenomena in our own ways. We all, as adults, take stock in our own paths that we have taken, the paths that we are now on, and the paths that we will be taking in the future if we are to grow as a human being. Fall is also a time when we, as the leaves, shed lifetimes of mistaken beliefs and see beliefs for what they are, just beliefs. The results of years of indoctrination not based on facts, usually, or reason, usually, but on fear and ignorance. Fall is a time to find courage to conjure up the wisdom we need to pursue our own physical and spiritual growth. A time to shed dogma and in its place accept logic and reason. For me, it is a time of evaluation to answer seemingly unanswerable questions. Who am I? Why am I here? I am the product of myself, with each lifetime a continuation of the last lifetime, brought into this world by parents that taught me to think for myself. My father's parents were dashingly handsome people. My father's father was an Irishman who lived in Jamaica back in the 19th century. My father's mother was a tall, stately lady who was very proud of her maroon heritage. My father and his 13 siblings lived a happy country life in St. Anne, a life based on farming, coffee, and other fruits and food of nature. My father turned out to be a very handsome man, a dashing man who attracted many ladies, the consequence of which were many children. No moral judgment from my part, I'll tell you that. I, being just one of 8, I think there might have been even more. What is important about my father, however, was learning the greatest lesson of all from him about reincarnation. One of these days I must write a book about that. For now, let me just say this. Like autumn, change is what life is all about. Fall is a time of the year when we take stock in our own being and ask the necessary questions. Who am I? Why am I here? My dad died some years ago. Not death in your sense of the word, but death as in making a transition. 2 important things happened. One very subtle, one not so very subtle. Number 1, I realized that I am the sum total of all my experience and knowledge, which is an awful responsibility because I come to realize that I will pay for all my evil deeds. I simply cannot pray them away. It's called cause and effect. I will reap what I sow. It is called karma, fed by an invisible aspect of life called intuition. I'm also a part of something greater than myself. I'm a part of nature, what some people would call God for lack of a better word, but never in a religious sense. With my father's transition came the realization of what is truly important. After his death, so many people stole so much of his material stuff, but none of that mattered to me. His transition put a true value of what he owned. He took none of his stuff with him. You may think whatever you wish at this point. Number 2, the second thing that happened was at my father's funeral. I met one of his sons, a brother that I had always known about but never met before. That story, by the way, is quite a story. It is what good movies are made of. But you're going to have to wait for another time. There was no doubt that he was my brother. His resemblance to my father was striking. My dad had always talked about the regret of not having this brother around him. And I, as his son, felt that it would have been nice to have had that big brother around. But karma is karma. I had spent about 15 or so years of my dad's 93 years with him. The amount of time was hardly as important as the quality of the time spent with him. In the brief time that I was with him, I learned a lot about a man called Father, and in so doing learned about his spiritual side. I am so impressed. I learned from him that just about everything having to do with religion was totally wrong. which, by the way, put me on a path of self-discovery, which led to my concepts of spirituality. What I learned, of course, is that just about every holy book was written by men with the motivation to enslave either your mind or your body, using God, of course, as the excuse to do so. Once I abandoned false beliefs on religion, I was then free to pursue truth. I had started earlier as an exercise in academics, but my father's so-called death gave me the impetus to go ahead and own my own discoveries. I learned the basics, of course. Religion is a concept and creation of man which has nothing to do with God. All religions experience miracles, which is a product of one's own belief system, one's own individual expectation or faith, which has nothing to do with religion. Have you ever heard of the placebo effect? I also learned that the cement that binds people's attachment to religion is the manufactured fear as perpetuated by politicians and preachers. You're free to argue that point. As a matter of fact, I hope you do, because if you do, with sincerity, you too will come to conclusions not in keeping with a lifetime of mistaken beliefs. By the way, you should keep in mind that inspired men and women have been enlightened enough to share their pathways in being enlightened. It simply means that they are showing you pathways to your own enlightenment. But that's another video. To continue, what really was enlightening about my father was what happened after he gave up this lifetime. And be warned, what I'm about to share with you is from my own personal perspective. You must then think for yourself. Ready? Here goes. Once upon a time, many years ago, my father, in repairing the roof on his house, had a very severe accident with hot tar. It burnt his leg so severely that he was permanently scarred. This unfortunate incident was there for my benefit, I think. I know he suffered the pain, but I learned a lesson because later, after my father died, my long-lost brother was blessed with a great-granddaughter, and I was blessed with the opportunity to see her. On seeing this beautiful newborn baby, and in a flash I knew absolutely that I was looking at the reincarnation of my father. I asked to see her leg, and yes, the scar was there for me to see. Chills and excitement, oh yes, of course. That baby looked directly in my eyes, and I knew that I was witnessing the soul of my father, the eternal soul of my father, who had returned as his own great-grand-niece. I know you, the listener, find this way too bizarre to believe, but that's okay, really, it is okay. My own family do not believe a word of all this anyway, but as I said, that's okay. Whether or not you believe me is of no consequence. You need not believe in gravity either, but try jumping off a 6-story building and see what value your beliefs has in your survival. I believe that each soul is in a different stage of development, and each soul will come back over and over again to not only learn, but also to fulfill their karmic debt. But that's just my belief. I have my theories about why and how my father was reincarnated in my lifetime. I think my father missed not having his own son in his lifetime and chose to come back as a part of his own son's family. I think he came back as a woman to know what it's like to be a woman. I think he came back when he did because he knew of the sincerity of my quest for truth. Why not? So many so-called religions talk about eternal life, even though many religions use the concept to control and to enslave. You have heard my story. Don't believe a word of it. Think for yourself. Just remember this. No matter what you believe, autumn is a time for change. Change is the only constant. You're not the person you were yesterday, and you're certainly not the person you will be tomorrow. That is, we, as human beings, are not at all unlike water. We either constantly change, accept these change, or we stand still and we stagnate by being stubborn not to accept changes. autumn will be here next year and next year and the year after that and the year after that. And it'll continue to return each and every year, no matter what you believe.